Don't go anywhere. You'll hear Gwyneth's conversation with District 3 challenger Alexis Martinez Johnson in just about 10 minutes. And you can watch our full candidate conversations online on our New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now, for now, let's bring in our line opinion panelists for the week to talk about the rise in election misinformation. We're happy to have attorney Sophie Martin back with us, along with Tom Garrity, president of the Garrity Group Public Relations. And we're thrilled to introduce a new panelist this week, reporter Leah Romero from the Las Cruces Sun-News. Leah, thank you for being with us as well. Now, the state's top election officials are trying to combat a rise in misinformation ahead of Election Day. Secretary Maggie Toulouse Oliver recently made voting machines available to the media to show how they work and the security involved with counting each and every vote. Now, Sophie, I just got to ask, was this a necessary move to ease people's concerns? Is it enough? I mean, how would you place what the Toulouse Oliver folks are trying to get across up there?
I think it was a very savvy move. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the challenges that her department and many of us have when you're kind of confronted with people who have bought into disinformation about a particular topic is that they may also not believe what the media has to say about that topic. So, I don't think that it's the silver bullet that's gonna resolve the issue of concerns amongst members of our community about voting security and the voting machines. Mm-hmm. But at least I think that the journalists who were there can make more informed, can be more informed in terms of their reporting, and I think her office's hope is less likely to really highlight and give credence to people who say, there are these problems, it's going to get hacked into, this or that is going to happen. So right. I think it was necessary. It's worth noting, like, some people are not going to be swayed by that.
Mm-hmm. Leah, kind of taking Sophie's point out there a little bit further, Secretary Toulouse Oliver and Attorney General Hector Balderas released a voter information advisory. It outlines state and federal laws against election interference and voter intimidation. But we've learned top right-wing election deniers are training poll watchers. You're in an interesting situation where you're located, where there's been a lot of activity about trust and mistrust about voting machines. Any impact in your part of the world, part of the state, on voter turnout particularly?
So, not exactly.
Okay.
So in speaking with the county clerk for Doñana County recently, we're kind of on par with 2018 numbers. 2020 was sort of an out of the blue, it was a presidential election year. So numbers are going to naturally be higher, but for this year compared to similar 2018, we're kind of on par. About 13,000 or so early votes have been cast at this point. And in 2018, that number was almost 36,000 by the end of early voting. So we've still got some time, and there's always that, we're coming off of a presidential election. We're going to see lower numbers. But at this point, officials are saying we're kind of par for the course.
Mm-hmm. Tom, Cleta Mitchell, the Republican lawyer who advised President Trump to challenge the 2020 election, said in a video interview with Steve Bannon, of all people, that she and others are training poll challengers in New Mexico by name in other parts of the country. I ask again, should we be concerned here? We don't know what their goal is, being a poll watcher, so to speak, but is this enough to be worried?
Well, I think we all need to be engaged and involved in the electoral process. Mm-hmm. People have forwarded me emails that went out looking for, poll challengers, poll watchers and stuff. And, I think that, the point that you brought up earlier, as far as, as far as building the event that the Secretary of State had to basically build awareness about the voting machines, it was a solid move. However, I think that a lot of the education focus right now is on the election deniers. How do you take the teeth out of their particular argument?
Right.
Instead of providing an overall education to the general population? Because the greatest issues, as Leah and Sophie have mentioned, that the voting systems are facing in New Mexico is understanding and trust. And a lot of the discussions from government officials are being focused on that trust element. And government officials just aren't a trusted element.
Right.
So what needs to happen is that you need to go back and create a similar based understanding and of what is the electoral process, how does a voting machine work. And the Secretary of State has definitely started that conversation, which is important. But the whole context of trying to reach the average New Mexico voter is very difficult, because the words and terms that are being used are those which are pretty foreign to people, even who follow different parts of the electoral process. What is a presiding poll judge? And then there are different phrases that are being used as well, like voting system certification committee, election assistance commission, voluntary voting system guidelines. And these words all obviously tie back to different aspects of the electoral process as far as the way the voting machines, the voting process works. But those words tend to intimidate a lot of people in New Mexico from being engaged in the system because they don't understand what those words are.
I have to agree with you. That it did sort of strike me as this was rolling out. Who are you talking to here exactly? Talking to media people is one thing. Talking to the general public is another thing. That's for sure. Sophie, let me lead you to this point too. What about the election workers? I was really struck that Ms. Toulouse Oliver said her office will have a virtual situation room connecting law enforcement and other officials with local, state, and that seems like a really good idea. I'm curious your take on it.
Oh, I would agree. So, I went and cast my ballot earlier this week, and I'm always struck by the dedication of the poll workers, but also by the fact that they are quite vulnerable in those locations.
That's right.
I mean, there they are, they're sitting out there. It's important, and I want to highlight this, that while there will be this connection to the state police, you in most circumstances, when you show up at the polling location, there will be no one in a uniform there. Because there's concern as well that having a police presence there could intimidate some of the voters who are coming in to cast their ballots. But you go in and you look at who is there, and you think they really, in addition to supporting our right to vote, the poll workers, they do put themselves in a vulnerable position when emotions are so heightened, when we know that the likelihood of disruption, it seems higher this year than it may have been in past years. So I'm relieved that idea that they're not calling it a war room, whatever they're calling it, but that idea of the integration of these different systems, the communications are going to happen. I hope that it isn't necessary, but I also hope that it's something that they continue in future elections.
Good point there.
Because we need to be protected as voters, the poll workers, the whole process needs to be safe for everyone involved.
Fair point there. Leah Romero, I'm interested about what happens after Election Day during the certification process. As you know, Otero County commissioners only just approved the 2020 election results after a court order. And there's certainly there's a concern something similar could happen in Torrance County now. Are you concerned about another repeat of the situation that you had in down your way? Because that got ugly for a lot of people.
It did. I feel like that's always a concern. I mean, now, especially in recent years, that's always a concern. We've had some changes on county commission boards, and we've seen some people come in, come out. So who knows? It could be particularly down here in CD2, something that we see.
Yeah.
But it's something that, like I said, is becoming something that you just anticipate.
Yep, exactly right. Thanks to our Line Opinion panel. We'll meet right back here at the virtual roundtable in less than 15 minutes to talk about the troubling new standardized test scores for New Mexico students.